So my name is Nina Pangon. I am one of two HeatSmart Tompkins interns for the summer. My other summer intern is Dana. And I am a student at Cornell University here in Ithaca. I'm a rising junior. It's kind of hard to believe that I'm already halfway through college. And my primary major in the College of Arts and Sciences is Biology and Society. So this internship has really allowed me to explore more of the environmental sciences part of my major and to work with the local Tompkins County community, which isn't something that I've really been able to do much of, just being here during the school year as a student. It's really exciting to be hosting today. This is the first time that I've been invited to host a webinar. And my internship experience thus far has been pretty great. I've learned a lot about heat pumps and renewable energy sources. And it's been a lot of fun helping my community through education and outreach. I really do believe, like so many of my colleagues, that heat pumps and other sources of renewable energy are the way of the future, and that the public needs more education about them so that we can all make informed, educated decisions about where our energy is coming from and where we want it to be from in the future. And without further ado, I'll introduce the others on the call. So there's Lisa Marshall, who's our HeatSmart Tompkins co-director, Jonathan Comstock, our HeatSmart Tompkins director, Dana Grover, our other HeatSmart Tompkins intern, Nick Pryputniewicz from NP Environmental, who will be doing most of this presentation. And let me see, is there anybody else?
Yes, we have Bennett Sandler, who is the program director of HeatSmart at Seago. And I don't see anyone from HeatSmart CNY, so I think that's it for the HeatSmart team. Thanks, Nina. Go ahead.
So later on, there'll be a Q&A session, and you can ask any questions that you might have about this webinar or about your own homes, and Nick will be a really great resource for that, as well as the other HeatSmart people. So a little bit about HeatSmart Tompkins. We are a community-based nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide you with all the necessary informational, networking, financial, and general support-based resources as you consider transitioning away from heating and cooling-related fossil fuel use to renewable sources of heating and cooling, such as heat pumps, hopefully. And next slide. So let us be your guide. Studies show that the #1 reason that people don't implement heat pumps in their own homes is because they simply don't know about them. There's not a lot of information that's necessarily passed on to the community. So we're here to do that. We're here to fill that, the knowledge gap with information about heat pumps, what they are, what different types are, how they work differently, and which options there are that can best suit you and your home's unique needs. HeatSmart Tompkins is a neutral source for information about heat pumps and renewable energy. No matter what part of the process you're in, whether you're still just considering changing, your energy source, whether you're ready for action and want to get in contact with an installer or one of our installer partners, or whether you're just troubleshooting an existing renewable technology issue in your home, there's really no wrong time to enroll on our website. And I'll talk more about the short enrollment process later in the webinar. We have partnerships with 4 competitively vetted installer partners around the area, and our competitive process ensures that you are getting the very best quality technology and customer service at the best prices available. Again, we are a neutral source. So HeatSmart Tompkins doesn't make any money off of our installer partner sales, but we do recommend their services if you choose to go through with the installation process or just home assessments. Next slide. So this map shows the various clean heating and cooling communities in New York State. As you can see, HeatSmart Tompkins is in the purple, and we're proud to have been the very first HeatSmart program. We started as an entirely community-funded organization, and back in 2016, NYSERDA took notice of our organization's efforts and began providing funding for our outreach and community education such as this, and also for my internship. So our program has been so successful, in fact, that NYSERDA has funded the advent of 13 other HeatSmart programs and clean heating and cooling communities across New York State, as you can see on the map. Next slide. HeatSmart in the time of COVID. Wah, wah. So one of the ways we've changed our outreach methods is with online events rather than our preferred in-person community events. And we encourage you to visit our website, heatsmarttompkins.org, where we post video resources like the installments of our webinar series, like this webinar, which is being recorded and will be posted shortly, to our lunchtime installer series, as well as virtual home tours, more of which are coming soon, and other relevant sources of information and resources that you could possibly need. So as New York State is now in phase 3 of reopening, the pause has been lifted for installers, meaning that they are now legally allowed to come to your home for an in-person home assessment. However, if that makes you uncomfortable, there are also options to have a remote home assessment through photos, videos, and phone conversations with the installers. So with that introductory information, I'll stop sharing my screen now and turn it over to Nick Pryputniewicz from NP Environmental to present air source heat pumps versus ground source heat pumps and how to decide between your options. I'll stop sharing my screen now.
All right, thanks for the introduction. I'll switch over, Nina, and share my screen so we can go through the presentation that we put together. All right, so we are NP Environmental. My name is Nick Pryputniewicz. I'm one of the owners. The other owner is my wife, Janelle. And one of the topics that I wanted to discuss today, I think it's a good topic, and sometimes it takes me a little bit of time to figure out what I really want to present. And we like this opportunity to be able to present because it helps us to convey information through the HeatSmart program, and they've set up a nice platform for us to speak about this. So I wanted to talk about air source heat pumps versus ground source heat pumps. Now, we get a lot of questions around which one's better, or which may be the best solution. So I figured that it would be a good presentation to do today. A little bit about NP Environmental. We started back in 2004. After graduating school, I spent a lot of time in the mechanical industry. My father was in the construction industry, and I always had a passion for mechanicals and how assemblies went together and different buildings operated. And every building is different. I mean, every place I walk around, it's amazing to me the different types of construction that there are and how the different buildings perform. So for us, I enjoy the designing aspect of it, the build aspect of it. We like the application side of things. I really like to see a project go from start to finish. And for us, we specialize in heat pumps because we know it's the best technology. And when you look at my bullet point there, 250 to 400% plus efficiency, it's a question we get all the time. It almost seems unfathomable. And you look at applications, we do residential, we do commercial, and we've been working with heat pumps since day one. And our HeatSmart community involvement is very important because for us, we truly believe in the educational aspect of it. Years ago, initially in the heat pump industry, the education just didn't exist. It's technology that's been around a long time, but the information hasn't been out there. It really wasn't put on the table as an option. You have all these different options, and heat pumps were never included. And now when you bring in air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, different forms of distribution, it's difficult to make a decision. And for us, one of the important things for us is people, because there's people behind everything, behind every technology, behind everything that's done here today, and every advancement we make, there's people behind that. And we're happy that we're a part of that. And we feel that our contribution, being an applications-based company, is to applying heat pumps. And it's, our team members have a passion for it. It's difficult to get into our company, and we've been finding great individuals. And it's nice to know that we offer great jobs, we offer great opportunities, and they're all right here. And there's a transformation taking place, and the individuals that work within our company have that passion. Passion is just so important with everything that we do. And if you look at any successful company, any successful endeavor, there's passion behind it because you truly believe in it. And it's nice for us and it's nice for our team members because we offer a product that we can convey that passion. So we love it. And I want to go, I included this slide with the previous webinar, and I think I want to include it all the time because heat pumps are for everyone. And you look at the applications, if you're way down to 35 degrees or all the way up to 135 degrees, 35 degrees on the cooling side, we can even use it in processes, or we go all the way up to 135 degrees. That's a broad range. And we can easily provide the comfort that's needed with any building, small home, large home, old home, new construction, commercial building. There's just so many applications for it. And it really comes down to that temperature range of 35 to 135 degrees. They just work, and they work great. And they achieve those efficiencies of, you're looking at 250 all the way to 400% plus, which is great. So, factors to consider. When you're looking at the comparison between air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps, I always get the question, well, which one's better? And my answer is, well, that depends. And when you look at different applications, we took 3 example projects, and I can tell you that going into these projects, I wasn't 100% certain at which route we would go. And I'll talk about one project where it was finally, when we really got down to the requirements for the customer, the requirements for the building, and what the expectations were for the system, it went totally a different way than what I had originally anticipated. And the same went for that customer. So it was great to sit down across the table from her and make that decision together. So some of the factors that you want to consider, you're always looking at the price. You always want to look at the price. We're always looking at the economics. We're looking at that return on investment. We're looking at that payback period. It always comes up. It's something that's there. Everybody has a budget, so we want to try to meet that budget. And you also want to look at the carbon reduction, because when you're installing a heat pump system, you're putting in the best system. It's the most efficient that you're going to get. It offers great comfort. You also want to look at the land area when deciding between a ground source heat pump or an air source heat pump. If we don't have the room, or if there are constraints within the exterior that won't allow a ground source heat pump, you probably can't go in that direction. Geology is a big consideration too. I can tell you that I was looking at a commercial project to where they were really interested in geothermal, but there's an aquifer below this establishment. They make some pretty cool parts, and geothermal just, it seems like it's not an option. So what are the options? You also have to look at the disruption. You look at the landscaping. If you look at the house in the lower right-hand corner on your screen, there are many important things to Katy outside of her home that she didn't want to see disrupted. You also have to look at distribution. Go back to Katy's system again. She had an apartment, house, workshop. There's so many things going on that there's some difficulties there when applying these 2 technologies. Aesthetics, that's another consideration. How are the components of the system going to interact with the home, and how the individual lives within the home? System longevity, how long does it last? Well, ground source heat pump is going to outlast an air source heat pump. System maintenance. And then I have down here in parentheses, what's not on the list. And this is a question that I'll ask, and I'm hoping individuals will give me some feedback, because we're constantly learning every day. But one thing that's not on the list is which one offers the better comfort. And both of them offer great comfort. It really all depends on what the expectations are and how we can line up with all of these different things in order to determine which technology is best for you. So I'll start with Katy Payne's home. I gave you a little brief introduction. You have the house, workshop, and you have an apartment. And then you have the house, which is forced air distribution. You have the apartment, which was hydronic distribution, heating, baseboard. And then you have the workshop that had baseboards. So like it really wasn't, it was just kind of put there in order for, you know, heating in the workshop area. And then other thing to consider, exterior aesthetics, key factors we look at, we ask the questions. And one of the important things to Katy was there's a pond in the backside, beautiful landscape. She spent many years working gardens to make the exterior look the way it is. And I'm thinking, how am I going to put a geothermal loop field around the exterior of this home without disturbing the requirements from the customer? And then also the other factor, cooling and humidity reduction. It's in her workshop, she builds violins. I mean, she spends a ton of time on it. I mean, we were there and she's just working on them. And these are, wood is the main material to construct these. So humidity control is important for her in the workshop. So the challenges, we look at those challenges. We have 2 separate HVAC units. The distribution, we have ductwork that really isn't in great shape. And then we have a baseboard distribution system in the other portion. We have the exterior disruption. We have the exterior aesthetics. Then we have the cooling and humidity control. How do I apply the cooling and the humidity control with a ground source heat pump system? So what we ultimately decided, and we put numbers together for both the ground source and an air source heat pump system. And I sat down with Katy myself, and we both looked at each other and going through all the constraints, what we call them constraints, looking at all of those different components, we decided that together that an air source heat pump was the best solution for it. And the reason that we decided that was, you know, the number one factor that we looked at was the exterior portion, because there is a disturbance. You saw in the previous slide, the ground source heat pump system, there's disturbance to the backyard, there's disturbance to your landscapes. So looking at that, we had to consider that. And we couldn't really access with equipment or anything without disturbing what was important to her. And then the other factor we're looking at is we had 2 separate distribution systems. So we're looking at a forced air, we're looking at a hydronic. How do we take a ground source heat pump? Not that we can't do it, but how do we apply that, but also meet the goals financially for the project and meet the goals for the exterior aesthetics? It just couldn't be done. So we decided on, a multi-zone air source heat pump system. So it has 7 interior heads. We were able to completely remove all of the old distribution system. We had no landscaping disruption. We addressed the heating, cooling, and humidity throughout, because all of these are individually zoned. So we're able to meet all the criterion that she wanted to meet, that she had set out for us in order to install the system. Total system cost, you're looking at $31,000. Now, you may be thinking, geez, that's a lot of money, Nick. Wow, that's expensive. And then I've got payback period here as immediate. And I've got a little star there. And there's a reason that I have that there too. Because she had a system that needed to be replaced on both sides. They were nearing the end of their life cycle. The duct system for the home was inadequate. Dirty, very dirty, just, you know, it just wasn't a clean system. That would have to be upgraded. I needed cooling. So when you look at the numbers to upgrade a conventional system, and now this is only one component here that we're talking about too. When you look at those numbers, upgrade to a conventional system, and you do the math, and then you see what the expectations are for the customer in order to meet those goals, she was spending about $4,000 a year on propane. I believe that number is pretty close to accurate. That's a lot of money. A lot of money to just be throwing out, $4,000. And you're not even meeting the needs of the customer because you don't have the cooling, you don't have the humidity control. If you have an imbalance in distribution, the workshop, there was just no application of dehumidification at all in the summertime. And it seems to me for an individual spending that much time in the workshop, building these violins, beautiful works of art. I mean, just the attention to detail and everything. So when you ask me what the payback period is, well, number one, there is a payback period, because when you compare it to any type of fossil fuel system, that phrase doesn't even come into the equation. So it's immediate for this application. And you look at the benefits of this type of system, not only to the consumer, but to society as a whole, the created jobs here locally. It's just tremendous. So next project, Jan Falls. This is a cool project. And the reason that I like talking about this project too is because when I walked into this project, Jan's first response to me was, Nick, I can't afford a heat pump system. It's just way out of my price range. I said, well, Jan, let's take a look and see if that's the case. And what I found when I entered the home was a distribution system that was in great shape. She had a failed fossil fuel burning unit, so she had to do something. She already had the quote lined up. The price was about $9,000 to go conventional. Domestic hot water, we run a 2-tank de-superheater system, buffer tank, electrified tank, fed by the geothermal. She had an extra tank already there, just waiting to go in. She wanted reduced operational costs because propane's expensive and reduce her carbon footprint. So the main challenge that we had was in the backyard. We had somewhat limited space in order to put a loop field in. So what we did was we take a look at the geology, we take a look at the space required, we look at the requirements for the home to match up the loop field, and it turns out the solution for her was a ground source heat pump. She checked all the boxes from earlier, the things that we addressed, the price, carbon footprint, exterior constraints, interior constraints, all those things. And then we come up with a ground source heat pump system, forced air. Our ductwork was in great shape. Everything was just there. It was ready to go. It was an easy switch. And then by the time we ran the numbers, if you look at the bottom, you're talking about $15,000 after incentives, and we were able to finance the project through NYSERDA with a payback period. Now, when you say payback period, this is simple payback period. You apply the math, you look at the savings and what the cost of the system is. So you're looking at 6 years. But if she upgraded to a conventional system, you're looking at that $9,000, so she'd have to spend that anyway, but she wasn't getting cooling. So how much weight do you put on that portion of it, the advantage of cooling? Because it's funny, because a lot of homes I walk into originally, installing ground source heat pump system, air source heat pump systems, cooling, we don't need cooling. Every home I walk into, when it's 85 degrees, high humidity, it's 75 in the home, low humidity, and nice and comfortable. That cooling is running and it's operating, and it's a nice feature there, super low cost, and it's a benefit. So when you talk about the payback period, can you really put a price on all the things that a heat pump system offers? There is a payback period. That phrase does exist. It's just simple. It's there. Then the comfort that it offers, the jobs that it creates, the carbon reduction, the life cycle of the system, the amount of money saved over a number of years, it's the better way to go. So when you bring that into the equation, I think that's a conversation that needs to be had, because if you look at investments in, comparison, maybe electric vehicle, look at how much less maintenance, less moving parts. Less moving parts means less failures. So you look at that and wow, geez, this is going to last quite a long time. It's going to reduce my operational costs. Many different ways to produce electricity can be done efficiently and done clean. Jonathan Miller's home. This is another cool project. Jonathan, I had originally proposed because his steam boiler, was potentially on its way out. And originally we had looked at an air source heat pump hot water heater, but the boiler was starting to give him some problems. So he called me up and said, hey, Nick, we probably should consider doing the air source heat pump system too. And the factors that we looked at here, carbon footprint, he said, Nick, geez, I really want to do the best I can for the environment. And my fossil fuel boiler, natural gas failing. I want some cooling. He likes to cook in his kitchen. He cooked some bread for me. It was good. Very good. Very good. I mean, I'd go there anytime for lunch. Actually, he did have us there for lunch, which was great. He loves to cook in the summertime, but the heat is tough. I mean, I know when I run my oven at my house and it's 86 degrees, high humidity outside. It's getting warm. So he was able to cook in the summertime with the application of the cooling and be more comfortable, which I thought was a cool side benefit because he enjoys cooking so much. And the hot water was the other thing to consider. So the challenges were price. Number one, natural gas, super low in cost, super low in cost. So you're like, oh, geez, why would I even consider going with a heat pump? The natural gas is just low cost, low operation. His house was heating fine. So price was a serious consideration for Jonathan to make the switch. But there were things that outweighed that price for him in order to make the decision. Payback period. When you look at natural gas, it's tough. Exterior aesthetics. He's located up on top of a hill. For us to go geothermal there would be very, very difficult. And the distribution that he had inside would have to be upgraded. And then you look at the interior aesthetics of the home. How do you apply the system? And then we're competing with low-cost natural gas. So in the end, which was almost a decision from the beginning, was an air source heat pump system. So we did 2 exterior units, 6 interior heads, no landscape disruption. We met the needs for heating, cooling, humidity control throughout, and his total investment was $28,000. So when you look at that, he probably would have had to, that boiler would have had to been replaced at some point in time. But he'd have no cooling. And cooling was a significant benefit to him. So when I put payback period, when you look at it from the simple payback period, the dollars and cents of it, natural gas being so cheap, the payback period in that phrase really doesn't exist when you do the simple payback period. But when you look at all of the other benefits that that Jonathan's able to have from a system like this, he has his hot water now. That is heat pump hot water heater, works great. And then he has heating, cooling, humidity control throughout. We met the needs of the home. The boiler, you don't need anymore. So we check all of those boxes. And his number one thing was, hey, Nick, I want to do the best thing for the environment. And how can you put a price on the future? You know, I look at my kids, they're growing up fast. They're 11 and my son's going to be 14 coming up. And I look at the opportunities for them and what the future looks like for them. And I'm a pretty practical individual. Our company's a practical company. And if there's a better way of doing things, we should be looking to do it that way. And we're firm believers in that. And we've always thought that way. So that's why for an engineer, myself, it makes pretty good sense to go with a heat pump system. So conclusions, air source heat pump, ground source heat pump, which is better? Well, in order to answer that question, what's better for the application? What's better for the consumer? We have to look at the exterior constraints, interior constraints, price constraints, payback period, and then which one, you got savings, cost, carbon reduction, which one goes first? How do you decide one way or the other? So I'm going to tell you, it depends on your specific situation, your specific application, and what your goals are for the project. But at the end of the day, you can get great performance from an air source heat pump or a ground source heat pump. You just have to look at the applications of the system and what's going to be best for that application, what's going to be best for you, what's going to meet the needs, because both of them can achieve those things, but you have to look at what's important to you and what's important for the future and what offers the best opportunity. But as I said in the beginning, heat pump application 35 to 135 degrees, the heat pump fits the bill for that temperature range. And ultimately, it's going to give you the longest lasting, best performance that you can get. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. That was a really great presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, heat pumps really are for everyone, and it makes it clear there that different homes pose unique challenges, but that those challenges can be met with different options for heat pump installations and operation. And now I'll go ahead and share my screen and talk about before we move into our Q&A session, just to make everyone aware that there are 3 other installer partners. And today you heard from NP Environmental, from Nick. We also work with Halco Energy, Snug Planet, and the newest addition to our installer partner team, Daily Geothermal. And we're very happy to partner with these great companies. They've all been put through a rather rigorous vetting process to ensure their excellent customer service and their use of the newest, highest quality heat pump technologies. So the next step would be, we now invite you to take this step of beginning a relationship with HeatSmart Tompkins by enrolling on our website, heatsmarttompkins.org. And the entire process of enrollment only consists of a short form that you must fill out, and at the end of which you'll be able to select 1, 2, 3, or 4 of our installer partners. So either like just a 1 or 2, 3, or all of them, to contact for a home assessment. And these home assessments are free to you. You're able to receive as many as you would like. And we do encourage, for larger projects especially, that it's worth getting multiple opinions for well-rounded decision-making. Again, home assessments don't obligate you to set up a contract with any of our installer partners or to begin a project. They're simply for you to get all the information specific to your home's unique needs. So, oh, that's that slide. Again, enrolling on our website, HeatSmart Tompkins, selecting 1 or more of our installer partners. There's no obligation to go through the contract, and these home assessments are free. So now it is time for your questions. And thank you so much for joining us today. We'd love to hear anything that you might have, comments, questions, either via the chat function or verbally by unmuting yourselves. Nick and our HeatSmart Tompkins director and co-director will be able to answer any questions you may have. I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you so much, Nina. Great job for your first webinar hosting. We're really lucky to have these 2 great interns, clean energy interns for the summer, and hoping they'll stay on with us maybe for the fall. So we have a question from Chris, and now folks, you can type your questions into the chat function, or you can unmute yourselves and ask questions verbally, but we'll start out with a question from Chris. And Nick, Chris is interested in your take on old farmhouses where interior aesthetics are important. Before I turn that over to Nick, I'll say that Jonathan Miller's house, we have a beautiful video home tour on our website, so you can see the interior. That was definitely an issue for them. And the link is in the chat, but also you can find it on the HeatSmart Tompkins website. Go ahead, Nick.
So, yeah, old farmhouses definitely do present their challenges, and everyone is very different. So addressing the aesthetics in the home, we spend a lot of time on this. It's probably where most of our time is spent on any type of project, picking up locations. So I guess to answer the question, I would need more information to understand, you know, are we just heating? Are we looking at heating and cooling? Are there areas within the home that distribution units can be placed? What is the current distribution in place? So there are many different questions we would need answers to in order to determine what the best options would be. But from both sides, air source and ground source, there are many different ways that we can do distribution. And actually, we even see more and more ways for distribution coming about as we progress forward.
Thanks, Nick.
So,
I have a historic old farmhouse too, and so this is a really important question to me, and a lot of our homeowners do. So you're not alone. I think it's really important to take a look at the different options for the equipment and the distribution of the hot, warm, and cool air in your house, and figure out what will work for you. And all our contractors are really good at doing that. So we've got some great questions from D. King. How do air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps affect electricity usage?
So with both systems, they operate off electricity. So your electricity usage is going to go up for both of them. On the ground source side, depending upon the distribution, you know, you're looking at an increase with the system. It really all depends on the size home, but it's definitely going to increase. The amount that it increase really depends on home to home. But ground source heat pump typically will have operational costs about somewhere near half of what the air source heat pump is, at 2 times more the efficiency. But that could be different for other cases depending upon the distribution. But you're definitely going to see electricity costs increase with that. However, your fossil fuel just goes away completely. So you won't need any more gas, oil, whatever the fossil fuel is that you're using right now.
So it depends on your home and how warm you keep it and how you run your system, how efficient your, you know, how good your building envelope is. But we tend to see that for people who are converting from oil or especially propane, they're going to save money immediately on their monthly bills, quite a bit of money. For gas, converting to air source heat pump, your monthly bill may go up a bit. And for ground source heat pump, it's definitely going to be the lowest operating cost of anything. So that's what we tend to see. And it is, but there are other factors, like people tend to keep their house at a more comfortable temperature with the heat pump, and that's going to, you know, raise your cost than what you did before. So it does vary from home to home. So this is a question you're going to love, Nick, from Bruce Ward. If you are near a lake or pond, can you run the heat exchange loops underwater?
Certainly, as long as depending upon the water source, the depth of the pond, the condition of the pond, or the condition of the water source. If it is a lake, you would need permission. There are certain hurdles that you have to jump over in order to get it into a lake, unless it's on a property, you know, unless you own the lake. So there are regulations to that. But if it's a pond, yeah, it's a pretty easy process. And just to go back to the other question too, real quick, the average savings that we see for a geothermal system that you're going to see over 25 years is about $50,000 to $60,000 in total operational cost savings. So, and that's coupled to any type of loop field.
We have some breakdowns on those savings on our website. And although the price of oil this year is particularly low, they might not be quite current. But one of the things about fossil heating sources is that the price goes up and down. And once you have that system, you have to buy it no matter how much it costs, whereas the price of electricity is much more closely regulated. And we're lucky in this region that our electricity is relatively green and relatively cheap. So that's good for heat pumps. Okay, so Angus says, what is the outdoor air lower limit for air source heat pumps? That's such a great question because there's a lot of misconceptions about that. I will say that I was just in Norway, Angus, and almost everybody there, and we know Norway is really cold, heats with a heat pump, though most of them do also have a wood stove. Norwegians love their wood. But go ahead, Nick, and answer that question.
Sure. Yeah, -20 is typically the shutdown point for an air source heat pump system. And it's going to vary from system to system because depending upon line set length and how the system's laid out and designed, that can work the unit a little bit harder. So the design considerations for an air source heat pump are important, but you're looking at about -18, -20 is what the typical range is.
Obviously, the lower the temperature, the less efficient those air source heat pumps are, but the kind of cold climate air source heat pumps that are installed by the installers in our program are rated to go to really meet the lower temperatures that we find in this region, or at least we used to get in this region. Okay, Dick wants to know the Miller project cost. Is that after NYSERDA incentives, or is the $28,000 the gross or net cost? Let me just say that there's two kinds of incentives. Oh no, for air source heat pump there aren't, so I'll take that back. But I will say that for the new air source heat pump incentives are the best we've ever had. So the previous projects with air source heat pumps didn't have as good incentives as you can get now through NYSEG. So go ahead, Nick, and address the question for Jonathan.
So that was before the incentives was the 28,000.
Oh, wow, that's great. I didn't actually think that was going to be the answer. Okay, John wants to know, so the incentive for air source heat pumps now is approximately $1,000 per heating ton, but if they don't go by heating tons anymore. So when you get a proposal from any of our installers, they will tell you their price, then they will calculate the incentive for you. And on ground source heat pumps, they'll also let you know that for 2020, there's a 26% federal tax credit. Unfortunately, there's no federal tax credit for air source heat pumps at this time. But if you are thinking about ground source, just know that this year it's 26%, next year it's supposed to go to 22%. So if you can do it this year, you'll get a better price. Okay, so John says, propane usage for Jan's home was in excess of $3,000 annually, question mark. He's wondering about the 6-year payback. It seems high for a house that size.
What seems high, is it the propane usage or the?
John, you can just unmute yourself and ask the question if you want to clarify. Are you still there, John? There you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, propane usage, Nick, just seems high.
So there's other factors that you consider in that number too, because we're doing an apples to apples comparison. So if she were to compare conventional system, which was $9,000 just for the heating side of things, and then to add cooling, which the ground source heat pump systems offers, so you'd have to add additional cost to that. So when you put that number in and factor in the savings over the propane, that's how you get a simple payback period of 6 years, because you're doing an apples to apples comparison.
So 9,000 was just to replace the heating?
Correct.
Wow. Seems kind of high, but.
Yeah, I actually have a copy of the quote that she showed me. She said, Nick, hey, here's the price that they quoted me.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not here to place judgment on anybody's numbers or anything, basically providing the information that was given to us.
Yep.
John, you had another question. Why don't you go ahead and say what that is, since you're already unmuted?
Yeah, Nick, I was just wondering, in Katy's house, with the understanding that some of the areas were served by baseboard, so it wouldn't be viable, but would the duct system have been more viable, perhaps for a combination system under the new incentive program, which seems to be much more favorable for forced air source heat pump applications?
Well, number one, her duct system was significantly undersized. It's something that we see quite often in older homes. And ductwork, the portions of the house that the ductwork ran through were very inefficient. So even if considering new incentives, but I guess I'm not too familiar, unless maybe I've missed something, of the additional incentive for a ducted system.
Well, based on some number crunching we did, it looks like the incentives under the new program are much better for forced air source heat pumps than under the old system. Based on the efficiencies and the SCERs required, a lot of equipment didn't really apply to. They didn't qualify for the incentives.
So I'm going to we're going into the weeds here for most folks on the call. So I'm just going to put this question to the side to resolve. But
yeah, I can
raising it, John. I think it's important. We just to let everybody on this webinar know, the new incentives through the utilities are a little different than what we're used to, and we're all working together to try to figure out exactly what they are and how they work. And we're still working with the utilities to get them to tweak them so they work better for us. So that's why it sounds like we're a little confused. It's because we are. The good news is, though, that the incentives are very good. They are going to be around for 5 years. And in our region, heat pump incentives stayed about the same for ground source and went up a little bit for air source. So on the whole, we're although we have complaints about how the utilities are doing them, and we're keep pushing them to do better, but on the whole, we're quite happy with what we can offer, what we can tell you that is available to you. So
Yeah,
Nick, go ahead.
Lisa, let me just add to that, to the incentives. Yeah. When you look at the incentives, you know, for both ground source and air source heat pump system, the incentives are great. And it gives you an idea of what the mindset is going forward and how these technologies will be more applicable. But we also, I don't want to get away from, when we're looking at incentives, I don't want to push a project or a customer into a system that may or may not be the best solution for them, just because of the way that the incentives are laid out. I think ultimately we should be looking at the efficiencies of the system and what the needs of the project are and what the goals are for the customer. If you meet all those criteria, the incentives are good regardless. I mean, you have nice state, you have nice federal incentives, and there's additional incentives depending upon income levels and other things to consider as well. So I don't really want to get hung up on the details of the incentives and how they apply. When we're able to provide you an assessment, us or any other reputable contractor out there, all the reputable within this program, we'll be able to tell you exactly what you're looking at.
That's right, exactly. Okay, so Chris says, for ground source heat pumps, does the construction or the operation or both result in aesthetic issues? And I'll let Nick answer that, but I will say, looking at my house, and we didn't show pictures of this, but we have other webinars that show this. So often when you put in a loop field in a home, you do horizontal trenches. So for people that have a big old field in the back and don't mind that all being dug up, it's a one-time thing, but it is pretty disruptive. For significantly more money, you can have your loop field drilled vertically. So if you don't have that kind of space, or you just don't want the land disrupted, that is an option for you. So that's one we didn't really talk about in this particular webinar, but you know, depending on your space, your plantings, your landscaping, that could be an option that would make sense for you, but you are going to pay a premium for the vertical drilling, because that is a subcontracted out to a driller by our installers. None of our installers are drillers. Okay, so Nick, go ahead and take over for me, but Chris was interested in the, I'll just say one last thing. Ground source heat pumps, once it's all in, it is the most aesthetically pleasing, because the unit is indoors. There's nothing outside to look at anymore. Then it's just the distribution system. So if you have forced air, it just looks exactly the same as what you had before. It depends on how pretty your grates are. I personally want to put in pretty grates. If you have hydronic system, you can have distribution of, like, it could be baseboards, it could be radiant under the floor, but you can, if you want cooling with hydronic, you're going to have to put in a unit. And again, I'm going to refer you to Nick's beautiful job at Jonathan Miller's house, where the units provide heating and cooling, and they look like a sort of a plastic radiator. They aren't hideously ugly, but they aren't adding aesthetically to your house for sure. And you will want to consider where to put them and how that fits in with your aesthetic. And I think I just talked all over you, Nick, and didn't let you answer the question.
No problem. I appreciate the help. Oh.
I was a little confused by your comments, Lisa. It sounded like you were saying that John was looking at a hydronic ground source system, and that those inside units were fan coils associated with but it's an air source heat pump system from beginning to end.
That's right, but he had hydronic heat before, and that's why he didn't have a forced air distribution system. Yeah. He had radiators. So for him to get cooling, he needed, yes, that's right. If it had been a ground source heat pump for him, he would have had to have units inside that looked like that as well. So thanks for that correction, Jonathan. But they would look more or less the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can have those units that sit on the floor, or you can have high wall units, and they each have their advantages. Correct. We have pictures of all that on our website, and we also have fact sheets you can download and print out or read online about each of the different kinds of systems, as well as case studies. And we have one video home tour, and we hope to have more posted soon. So we have case study already up about Katy Payne's house, actually.
Okay, great. So I'll just provide a little bit more information on the aesthetics. I wouldn't call it aesthetic issues. There's many different options for the facing portion of the mechanicals on the interior side to fit with the aesthetics. Now, if you're talking to an individual like myself, I love mechanicals and I love the exposure of mechanicals. But other goals, there's different goals for every consumer. So what we look at are those different options for distribution. And then as far as in the construction process, if we're to do a loop field, whether it be vertical or horizontal, there is disruption to the landscapes that we have to cross or go through or whatever it may be. However, that's put back. I always say to our customers too, we're great mechanical guys, pipe fitters. We do a great job of vertical loops, horizontal loops, but as far as the landscapes go, we leave that to the landscaping experts to take care of that after we're done. So I wouldn't really call them issues, but I would call them, sometimes we have to compromise for locations of mechanicals from an aesthetic standpoint. That's why it's important to spend the time and where we spend a lot of time are working out the details of those aesthetics in order to determine what the best option is for the application.
Great. We know that aesthetics are very important to almost all of our enrollees. And I'll just, once again, encourage folks, no matter where you are, if you're just first thinking about this or you're ready to move forward with the project, enroll with your local clean heating and cooling. Bennett Sandler is saying he's just about to leave, but he's the program director for HeatSmart at SEGO, for those of you who are joining us from that region. We also have with us John Shaheen and Lindsay Spear from HeatSmart CNY, and they would love you to enroll with their program if you're in their region. Lindsay, do you want to quickly say hi?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I see a bunch of folks from Central New York on this webinar, so I wanted to express my appreciation to HeatSmart Tompkins for continuing to put together some great webinars, and we'll be picking up with a whole series of our own in the coming months. So glad everyone could join. And if anyone has questions, feel free to reach out to me. Website is heatsmartcny.org, and our hotline is 833-315-4328.
Yes, and I should say also that although we're directing you to our websites, we are also available. You can just, our phone numbers and emails are available to you on our websites, and you can just contact me or Jonathan or Lindsay or Bennett and ask us questions. If you're not ready to enroll, and lots of people aren't, and they just want to ask questions, that's what we're here for. That's our job. So please don't feel like you're bothering us. Please give us a call or send us an email, and we'll get back with you.
And people, we have a pretty good mailing list as well, which a lot of people got the information about this webinar on. But if you came to us through Facebook, something like that, we have on our website, you can sign up for get announcements about events like this. Upcoming events, some of the best practices about having heat pumps, a lot of educational materials.
Absolutely. So the runtime of this webinar is officially over, but we are happy to stay on to answer any additional questions. But if you have had your questions answered and you're just staying to be polite, we thank you for coming, and you're welcome to sign off, but you're also welcome to stay and chat with us. Nick will stay on. And thank you. Nick is joining us from his family vacation in South Carolina. So we thank him very much for being with us today. And we'll be here on with you if you have any more questions, and feel free to get in touch. I will also be sending a follow-up survey via email so you can let us know if this webinar met your needs and how we can improve. So please take a minute to answer that if you can. Are there any further questions? Don't be shy. No question is too large or too small. We're here for it. Lots of thanks and and comments in the chat. Thank you so much, Dale and Chris, Michael. Thanks, Dana and Nina, for the expert assistance and help.
So I have a question.
Go ahead, Dale.
I have a workshop that I'd like to put a heat pump heater in, and I don't know if the incentives apply only to homes or if there's incentives for also doing, used to be my business, it's now not so much, but what are the incentives along that line? So.
Great question. Nick, you want to take that?
Yeah, Dale, that's a really good question. And I can tell you that we had the same situation come up with a customer that we're currently working on a proposal for. He has a ground source heat pump in his house, and he wanted to add it into his workshop. And we did reach out to the utility, providing the incentive, and they did agree to provide the incentive for the workshop as well. So I don't know what the actual specific rules state within the program, but anytime that there's any confusion around that, we always send the information up to the individual who'll be writing the check, so to speak, and let them chime in on the approval of that. But we did get it approved for another project.
For the utility incentives, it's actually based on the size of the system now more than what the purpose is. So it covers residential, commercial, even small industrial, as long as the system's below 300,000 BTU hours. Beyond that, it's a custom incentive. But other than that, it's the lower cost incentive. I think if I remember correctly, the geothermal tax credit has to be for your primary residence. But if you're looking at doing an air source heat pump, then that wouldn't make a difference either.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at air source because I put geo in the home, as you know, but we're still paying for it. So so in the shop, I'm looking at trying to get away from using propane, which is so expensive. So
I think you can get the incentive for that, Dale. And it sounds like it's not a business anymore, but I will say we had a very exciting thing to offer that disappeared almost overnight, which was 0% financing for heat pumps as part of the economic recovery. And that money is all gone for residential. But if anyone is interested in their church, a nonprofit, or small business, I believe there are still 0% loans available through New York State for heat pumps and other efficiency upgrades. So,
so I should start my own religion in the shop? I could do that.
That's right. Start the Church of Dale Sherman, and then you'll be all good. No, I didn't officially say that though. But the residential loan money evaporated overnight, and in fact, they had put 20 million into it, and in a week and a half, that was gone, and they ended up going to 30 million in 0% loans, which was a lot of it went to solar, but about 20% of it went to heat pumps. So we're pretty excited that we had that opportunity, and it was a scary time, or it still is a scary time for the renewable energy industry in the middle of this pandemic. So we're really fortunate to have the support of NYSERDA and New York State thinking about us in the midst of everything.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh. We have one comment. Nick, better lighting for you next time, Nick. So next time
Oh, better lighting. Okay.
we'll light you better. We want to see your pretty face.
Uh-oh.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. We're going to sign off. I think the interns and I are going to go to a webinar about race and energy. So that is being offered at 1 o'clock. So I think we're going to sign off and go watch that. So thanks everybody for coming. Our Spring Summer HeatSmart campaign is the public facing part is drawing to a close now for the spring and summer, and we'll be seeing you again in the fall. But you can still get in touch, and you can still enroll anytime. Thanks everybody. Thanks, Nick. Enjoy the rest of your vacation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.